Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Remember, if you like this content, feel free to leave a like and a comment. If you want to see this content continue and grow, feel free to hit the subscribe button and to stay updated whenever I drop a new video or upload new content. Ring the notification bell. Now, without further ado, let's get into tonight's stories. Skinwalker in the woods. I live right next to a Navajo reservation and have made friends with many of the people there my age. We like to hang out, play video games, and just be normal teens. I walk over a lot since my best friend lives a little less than a mile away from me. This isn't a long trek and usually only takes me about 25 to 30 minutes. I've made this trip dozens of times and have grown very comfortable with it. I know the people along the way, so I'm not scared or on edge. There is a patch of forest, however, about midway there. It's a little unnerving sometimes. There's always that feeling of being watched. This was a regular occurrence for me, so I tried to just ignore it and shake it off as my mind playing tricks on me. This day I spent more time at my friend's house than I meant to, and when I left it was already getting dark. I reached the stretch of forest right as the sun disappeared from the sky. I shivered a little as I readied myself to begin the journey through. I was 10 steps in when I heard a branch snap. You know the sound, the one that screams there's definitely someone or something there with you. I froze, not sure of what I should do next. Should I run? Should I turn around and book it back to my friend's house? I didn't know the best option in this situation. I whispered, Hello? Hearing my voice crack as the word fell from my lips. I don't know why I even opened my mouth, but it was out there, so I listened for any reply. My heart sank when the answer came back in the sound of my voice. Hello? I started to breathe too fast. My heart pounded against my chest. I felt like I might faint. Hello? My voice came again, but not from my mouth. I wanted to run, but my feet felt cemented to the ground. I couldn't scream. I couldn't reply, as my voice echoed over and over from a short distance away. I couldn't pinpoint exactly where it was coming from. It sounded like it was everywhere around me. Hello? 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 It repeated. Stop it! I finally managed to tear from my lips. Everything went silent. For a long minute, nothing happened. The air grew stale, and I realized for the first time that there were no typical forest sounds. There were no bugs, no frogs, or crickets. Nothing. I stood there terrified, waiting to see what would happen next. Stop it! It mimicked back. I'd had enough and was willing my heavy legs to move. Before I could take a step, I heard rustling in the bushes 20 feet to my left. I watched in horror as a deer head with huge antlers protruded through the brush. As it came further out and stood up on twos, I took off. I flew out of those woods and all the way home in record time. I said nothing to my mom when I got there. I just went up to my room, laid down, and thought about what happened. My mother came in at some point and asked me if everything was all right. I replied that yes, I was just tired. I don't know why I didn't tell her. I guess I might have been afraid of how she would react. I called my friend and told him everything. He freaked out and told me that no matter what happened that night, to not reply or look out my window. This terrified me even more. He said to call him the next morning and he would explain more, and that he had to speak to his grandfather as soon as possible. That night I didn't fall asleep at all. I stayed awake, listening to every little sound the night brought. Around 3 a.m., just as I was about to drift off, the air changed. The night sounds quieted. I felt my heart begin to pound. I lay there and waited, pulling the covers up over my head like a child, far too scared to move. It came after a long moment. "Hello?" I cried. It was all I could do. "Hello? Stop it!" It mocked what I had said in the woods again. It was terrifying enough when it copied what I said, but then it did something new. It called my name. "Amy!" My mother's voice. "Amy! Amy, come here!" "Hello? Stop it!" My voice again. For the rest of the night, the creature outside my window called my name in my mother's voice and repeated what I said in the woods over and over. In the morning, when the sun broke through the dark, it finally stopped. I fell into a fitful sleep. I woke up around noon to my friend calling me to tell me he had spoken to his grandfather and could explain what happened to me. He said there was a creature they called Yi Naldlahushi, he who goes on all fours, or a skinwalker. He explained that it was an evil witch that used dark magic to transform into an animal with the attributes it required, and that it had caught my scent and knew me now. I was also given a warning that since it knew me, it would always follow me, and that I would always have to be careful. Last night, I had scratching on my window, then a low hum. The creature began saying my name again, but also adding in things I hadn't said in my mother's voice. At one point, it started calling my name, but drawing it out really far, like, "Amy!" It tried to get me to come outside or to open the door, and let it in my house. This went on all night. At this point, I feel like I'm going crazy. I don't know what to do. Is it seriously going to stalk the shadows around me for the rest of my life? I don't think I can take that. A wendigo broke into my house. Before I begin, I'm a 16-year-old male. About 3 years ago, I was in Virginia, visiting family over summer. We were right outside the D.C. area, and staying in a 2-story house near the freeway. On the other side of the freeway was a forest, so my mom, her boyfriend Eric, and I were all staying with Eric's parents. We had brought some night vision binoculars and decided that tonight was the perfect time to use them. So after dinner, we gear up and head out. We pass under the freeway and head into the woods. When we get about 5 minutes into the forest, we set down our bag and take out our binoculars. My mom looks around with them for a while, seeing a few squirrels here and there. She gets tired of them and passes them to me. I look around for a while, being careful not to look at the freeway for fear of being blinded. I spot something behind a tree about 50 feet to our left. I concentrate on it, trying to figure out what it is. It looks like a pale, bald, anorexic man looking straight at us from behind the tree. I get a bit uneasy, but I'm hesitant to believe it's really there. I ask Eric to take a look, just in case. To my despair, he sees it too. He describes it much the same way I did. Now, Eric is a former amateur boxer, and I train MMA almost every day. But neither one of us wants to stick around with that thing. We start heading back to the house, crossing under the freeway. We take another look behind us as a car comes by. All 3 of us see glowing eyes lit up by the headlights on the other side of the freeway. We say, "Fuck that," and head back to the house. When we get back, Eric's parents are asleep. My mom and Eric go upstairs to the guest room. There's only one guest room, so I get the couch downstairs. I'm a little too excited after seeing the thing in the woods, so I end up staying up all night. Around 3 a.m., I'm watching TV and start hearing footsteps above me. I immediately remember our earlier encounter and panic a little. I try to calm down and tell myself it's just one of the dogs, or maybe someone who couldn't sleep. I keep hearing the footsteps for a while, until I hear a doorknob jiggle. I find it weird that they're trying to open a locked door, but try to ignore it. They stop, walk around for a few more minutes, and then it's quiet again. I stay up until the sun starts coming up, and then pass out. My mom wakes me up, and I remember the footsteps from the night before. I described what happened, and asked if one of them got up at any time. She says no, I think it must have been one of the dogs. That is, until she tells me the room above me is the office. no one was in the office, and the door stays locked at night. My heart sinks as I piece it all together. I don't know if it was that thing for sure, but I think it was. I've done a lot of research since then, trying to figure out what that thing was that night. I found two creatures that seemed to match it. I think it was either a skinwalker or a wendigo. Whichever one it was, I'm just thankful that door was locked. I know I wouldn't be able to fight that thing, no matter how tough I am. Long-legged monster. Once I heard the other stories of these long-legged monsters, I remembered my experience with one. My sister and I were having a sleepover in my room. We slept on my bed. My bed was right next to the window because I like to look outside at night. She was texting her boyfriend on Snapchat. She took a picture of herself. I didn't notice it at first, but my sister did. "What is that in the background?" she said. I looked closer. There's a generator outside of my bedroom window where the power comes into the house. There was a black figure that looked like it was looking at my sister in the picture. It had very long legs, and it was very lean. I looked outside my window to be greeted by darkness. I asked if she could send it to me, and then I screenshot it so I could look back on it. Then we went on, not thinking anything of it. My sister fell asleep, and I was alone awake in the darkness of my room. I tried to fall asleep after she did, because I didn't want to be sitting in the dark by myself. My room is right by the roof. I don't know if I was hearing things or not, but it sounded like something was crawling on the roof. Me, always watching horror stories, I hide underneath my blankets while the sound crept nearer. Then suddenly, it went away. After that, kept on watching YouTube videos, trying to get it out of my mind. The next morning, I forgot all about it. Don't worry, it's not the end of the story yet. I usually slept overnight at my friend's house. Her room was also by the roof. We always fell asleep early when I'm at her house. We both woke up to the sound of tapping outside of her window. She whispered to me, You hear that too?" My heart felt like it stopped when I could see the shadow of a very tall figure outside of her window, just like the picture the previous night. I was frozen in fear when this happened. She screamed for her dad to come. By the time he managed to get up there, it was already gone. The picture that I saved, I deleted it, and then I never heard or have seen the shadow ever again. I think I have a Bigfoot problem. Throughout the days, we take our 2 dogs outside to their kennels so they can get out of the house for a while and run and play and such. These are not small dogs. One is a black lab husky mix. The other one is a full-blooded Staffordshire Terrier pit bull. The kennels are placed at the edge of the yard near the woods. These woods are big, large enough to take a day to go hiking through them. lately, when it gets dark, the dogs seem on edge. They will bark and whine toward the house to come in. At first, I figured they just wanted to get back into the house, but now I'm thinking they're actually scared. 3 nights ago, when I went to get them, it was already dark, but we have a security light, so it isn't pitch black or anything. I got to the front of the first kennel and noticed both dogs were being quiet. They always bark at me excitedly when I go to get them, but they were dead silent. This weirded me out a little, but not to the point of being scared. I will admit that there was a certain uneasiness in the air, though. Something I can't explain, but it sort of felt electric, like I was about to be shocked. The longer I was there, the more uneasy I felt. I started getting the first dog, the lab, out and heard a heavy snap in the woods near the kennel. I froze. The dogs froze. By this time, I was so on edge that if someone had spoken, I would have jumped, screamed, and possibly ran. The creepy feeling in the air just kept getting thicker. The lab had her bushy tail stuffed underneath her and was whining. This didn't make me feel any better. The pit bull was as far away from the woods as she could get, whimpering for me to come get her. I can only take one dog in at a time because they get too excited and will sometimes try to fight, so I avoid that at all cost. I felt so bad leaving the pitty there by herself, but I had to do it. As I walked away, she barked this high-pitched, whining type of bark at me that I've never heard her do before. The lab couldn't get to the house quick enough. I went back for the other one and dreaded every step, as her door is right at the base of the woods. I would have to turn my back to the woods to open her door and get her out. The air felt heavy and stale, with an unpleasant smell like a dead skunk. As I approached the kennel, another snap, and I was about ready to run for it, but I didn't want to leave my dog, who had her head down defensively facing the woods. I could barely make it, to be honest. It felt like trying to walk through water. I was terrified by the time I reached the door. I heard heavy breathing behind me as I got my dog out. She was scared, too, but started growling behind me. I was frozen in place. The breathing continued for a minute before I heard steps started to come towards us. We both took off at the same time, a terrifying scream coming out of the base of the woods. I didn't dare look back. I just ran. My pity pulled me all the way back to the house. I got in, flipped off all the lights, and stared out the window at the woods. I could see something moving slightly, but just out of the light. It moved back and forth for about 5 minutes, then disappeared. It took me forever to fall asleep that night, because I was so scared that every little noise freaked me out. The next night, I went to get the dogs earlier, right around dusk. I thought all was good until I was getting my pity out again. A huge snapping sound, like a tree branch had just been snapped in half, rang out. It sounded pretty far away, so I hurriedly got my dog and started toward the house. A few steps away from the kennel, I heard something big start charging toward me from the inside of the woods. We ran again, and it began to follow for so long, then retreated back. Now, every night since then, I hear sounds coming out of the woods, like branches breaking and being thrown around, knocking on trees and roaring. I'm absolutely terrified. I no longer even take my dogs down. I just take them for walks during the day and make sure we are all in before dusk. I don't know what to do. I'm thinking about buying a gun, but I'm not sure it will help.